Opposition leader Ted Baillieu wants to lead the coalition to victory to that side of the parliament. If he loses tomorrow night, he's unlikely to remain as leader. If he wins, he'll lead only the second Conservative government to victory in Victoria in 28 years. I spoke to him this afternoon. Ted Baillieu, welcome to State Line.
Thank you, Josephine. It's a pleasure to be here at the end of this long campaign.
You've made an issue of integrity and accountability throughout your leadership. Do you think you've been properly accountable to the electorate on your promises when you've only released the costings 2 days before an election? Is that being truly open to scrutiny?
Josephine, we announced the costings of each policy as they went through, and we released the full accounting of that yesterday, and indeed we did it in advance of the government. They did it after we did it. Now, we did this in exactly the same way as John Brumby did it at the last election, and the election before that, and the election before that. We used independent accountants to assemble our budgeted costings, to check our costings, and to ensure that the numbers added up.
You didn't release, though, the independent costings till 2 days before the election. How can the public try and establish whether your costings are accurate?
We did this the same way that John Brumby did it at the last 3 elections. This has been the standard practice, and indeed we did it in advance of the government yesterday. I think any suggestion otherwise is really just the government, the Labor Party, doing what they do best, seeking to abuse others.
You launched defamation action against the ALP this week over their ads. Did that action override your campaign messages, and did it show that you're too sensitive to Labor's attacks?
Far from it. The Labor Party have a government that's driven by a dirt unit, and I'm not the only one that has been a target. We saw at the by-elections recently Les Twentyman a target. We saw before the election campaign started, other members of Parliament were targeted by the government's dirt unit. The Greens were targeted. I've been the target for some time. Somewhere along the line, someone has to stand up to a government that is driven by a dirt unit, not by a policy unit. That's what's wrong with this government. They've been there for 11 years. They're out of touch. They're out of ideas, and they've demonstrated their incompetence, and they resort instead to type, which is harassment, abuse, bullying, smearing of opponents and critics.
Just on those ads, the ALP ads, I know you say that you had nothing to do with the decisions of the Kennett government, but do you think that that government's decisions to sell schools and sack so many public servants was good policy or not?
Josephine, it was a different time, and all governments, this current government included, have disposed of property assets. This government, John Brumby, has signed off on the sale of many schools himself, more than 150 schools. That's what happens with government. Property is exchanged, and there's nothing different about the previous government. These are events from 17 years ago, signed off by the Auditor-General and conducted in a standard and professional way on a professional panel. It has just been rubbish from the ALP. That's the way they operate.
17 years ago, but the ALP is raising them, is putting the fear of that with the electorate. So it's fair to ask what you think of what the Kennett government did in those days.
Well, it was a different time, Josephine. The state was on the point of being unable to pay bills, and that was just a reality. There was nothing unusual about the professional relationships that were engaged in at that time. I had nothing to do with it on either side.
If you win government tomorrow, will you have to make similar decisions? You say Victoria's debt is too high. What hard decision, what hard cuts will you have to make? The point
we've made about debt is that it is now rapidly escalating. And John Brumby came to office and assumed the treasurership after 12 months. He celebrated each year the continuing decline in debt, which had started under the Kennett government. He celebrated that. He has been silent in recent years as the debt has started to escalate again. And Mr Brumby now has, in his advertising and indeed in the letterboxes of Victorians, advertising which promotes his $38 billion transport plan. That's unfunded. And we can only assume that he intends to grow debt at an alarming rate. And that means that in a short period of time, just 2 or 3 years more, Victorians will be paying $3.5 billion in interest every year to service that debt.
So will you be cutting the public service?
No way. And we've made that very clear. We have been responsible and modest and conservative about our commitments. And the irony of all of John Brumby and John Lender's claims in recent weeks about our spending and our costings is that our total commitments came in several $100 million under the government's commitments. And I think that just again reinforces this government's all about the sort of spin and rubbish that we've seen over the last couple of years.
The Labor Party has attacked you personally during this election campaign, calling you a sook, saying you're not tough enough for the job. Does this affect you personally?
Josephine, Labor Party's been doing this to me for a long time. I'm undeterred. This is the way of a government that's out of touch, it's incompetent, run out of ideas. And you don't survive in the job I'm in if you haven't got what it takes. And I've been here for 4.5 years. We've set a very clear agenda. We've resumed a coalition. It's a very stable and consolidated coalition with a good team and a clear agenda. And we're offering Victorians a clear choice. On the one hand, a stable coalition with a clear agenda, and on the other hand, an unstable alliance between the Labor Party and the Greens. The content of that deal no one knows.
Mr Baillieu, whatever the result tomorrow, do you commit to staying in the Victorian Parliament for the next term?
I've already made that clear, Josephine. I'm a stayer.
But will you I've heard you say you're a stayer.
Well, I've made the commitment, yes, I'm staying.
You're staying for the full term of this Parliament,
yes,
whatever
I've made
the
that
result?
Commitment. I've made that commitment.
Mr Baillieu, good luck tomorrow night.
Thanks, Josephine.